Hello, welcome back to my channel, Hasty Books. I'm Camilla and I'm coming to you from Canada. Woo! I'm so happy to be in my hometown finally. If you follow my channel a little bit, you might know it's been 3 years since I've been able to come home, obviously because of COVID and holidays and immigration papers and stuff like that. And basically mid-June I got the answer that my visa or my permanent residency had been approved. And a couple days later, when we were back in Scotland from our holiday in England and Wales, we got the papers. We received them, immediately booked flights, and flew 3 days later to Canada. So we just decided to go for it. It's been so long that we've been waiting for it. So we went for it and I'm so happy, and it's really great to see my family and friends. But I also feel like it's been really good to almost like center myself of being my hometown and going out to restaurants and eating food I used to eat. It's just such a diverse city, Montreal, and I love it and I love to be back. So I'm very happy. So I'm going to be filming from here for the next few weeks. I'm actually here for quite a while, and the filming situation is a bit ad hoc, precarious. So my camera is currently leaning over the AC because that's the best place that I could find it. And I'm currently in my parents' office slash library slash puzzle room. It's just really lovely. I may do a bookshelf tour at some point. There are literally books everywhere in this house, which I love. Anyway, let's not, start into a tour of that. Today I'm bringing you a mid-year freakout tag. I really enjoyed doing that video last year, so I thought, why not do it again this year? I won't go over stats or anything, mostly because I'm on holiday. I'm trying not to care about numbers and stuff like that. I'm just going with the vibe, even with reading. Already been to a few bookshops with my parents, and we're all like enabling each other to buy more books. So yeah, I'm just going with the flow. But what I will say is that I think I've read 60 or 61 books so far this year, like up to the end of June, and I wanted to read 75 books this year. So I'm not freaking out because I'm doing quite well. I could be doing a bit better with my classics, and some of the print, hard copy books that I own that have been on my TBRs, like for the summer and stuff like that. Obviously I only came with one book to Canada because I knew this house is full of books. So yeah, so I probably won't get too many of those this summer. We'll see when I head back to Scotland how that goes. But anyway, without further ado, let's get into the questions of the tag and talk about some of the books that I've enjoyed and what surprised me and stuff like that. And last year I did learn my lesson because I hammered on a lot about the same books. So this year I decided to be a bit more diverse in the way that I talk about the books that I've enjoyed, to kind of highlight more of the books. So let's dive right in. So the first question is, what is the best book that you've read so far in 2022? I read a lot of books this year, as I've said, over 60, and I think there's 3 that are the top of the list. It won't be surprising, but I'm very pleased with myself that I called this out really early. Early in the year, I think like January or February, I read Open Water by Caleb, Azumah Nelson, and I thought at the time this was going to be one of my favorite books of the year. Well, it's definitely topping the list at the moment. I think it's still a fabulous book, and it's still one of my favorite reads of the year so far. I guess it's not really second place, but at the top of the list with Open Water is Creatures of Passage by Morowa Yejidé, a book that I read for the long list of the Women's Prize for Fiction, and it really surprised me how much I loved it, and it was truly excellent, even though it's really dark and has some trauma and stuff like that, but really excellent book. And finally, the third book that I think is really topping the list is Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Lynn. I ordered that one. I think I requested it as an ARC on NetGalley, and honestly it was so good. I cannot wait for the sequel and the duology when it comes out. I think it's come out later this year or next year. Cannot wait. It was so good. And I'm actually quite glad that those 3 were the top because they're so different. Open Water being a very contemporary novel about love and grief and being a black man, black art, there's just so much the contemporary in this. Creatures of Passage has some similar themes actually, but it's very much a magical realism set in a kind of Washington DC of a few decades ago, if I remember correctly. And Daughter of the Moon Goddess is pure fantasy, based on mythology and legends. So yeah, I think it's really shows what the wide array of books that I'm currently reading. Question number 2 is best sequel you've read so far in 2022. I've actually only read 3 sequels this year so far. The first one is Anne of Avonlea by Lucy Maud Montgomery. It's the second in the Anne of Green Gables series. I enjoyed it. I thought it was good. I'm continuing the series. I think a lot of people kind of leave off from the second and third book, so I'll give it a try. I enjoy Anne as a character, so we'll see. Second is Four Aunties and a Wedding by Jessie Cusatanto. This is following from Dial A for Aunties that I read last year, which I really enjoyed. It was actually still so funny, like laugh out loud funny in places. I thought it was a bit more like wild and unrealistic than the last one, but I still really enjoyed it, and if there's another one I will definitely read it. And finally, the third sequel that I read, and I think that's one would be my favorite and the one that I would recommend, the whole series even, is Our Lady of Mysterious Ailments by T.L. Huchu. It's the second after The Library of the Dead. I forget what the series is called, but it's based, I guess it's like a magical realism / fantasy Edinburgh, where the main character has the power to talk to the dead, and she does it for a fee. And she's a very engaging character to follow, and I think this is a great kind of potentially replacement for sort of Harry Potter-esque series. So yeah, I would recommend that one the most, and I think it was my favorite sequel this year. Number 3 is new release that you haven't read yet but want to. It's actually quite embarrassing, but I have quite a lot of arcs from NetGalley, some from 2021. That's embarrassing. But I have quite a lot from the first half of 2022 that I haven't read yet or finished yet. I've been struggling to read ebooks recently. I don't know why, but anyway. But there's 2 that I'm really excited about. The first is Disorientation by Ellen Shih-Chu. This is kind of a young academic studying, I think it's a Chinese poet, and it's basically life in academia and her finding out some stuff, and like it sounds really cool. It's quite a long book, but I'm keen and excited to dive into that one. And the second one is Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmis. Yes, this is based in the 60s, and it's a woman who's basically a scientist, like a chemist, who ends up being the star of like a cooking show, and through that she's teaching women basically, I think she's teaching them to like break the mold and like, you know, inspiring them, and that sounds so straight up my alley, and I've heard amazing reviews of this book, so I'm also really excited for it. And then number 4 is most anticipated release for the second half of the year. And actually, I had a list of 10 books that I was really excited for 2022, and I think 9 out of the 10 came out in the first half of the year. So the only one that's coming out later this year that was on my list of anticipated reads for 2022 is Bloodmarked by Tracy Dion. This is the sequel in the Legendborn trilogy. I think it's trilogy. I'm saying it like I know what I'm talking about, but yeah, anyway, there's a series. I read the first one, I believe in 2020, and it was so good. I actually really enjoyed it. The character, I think the character was relatable in like her curiosity and her grief and her, I don't know, like she was so keen to kind of participate and find out what happened to her mother and like to the secret society. And yeah, I just thought it was really good, and I'm really excited. Like when I finished it, when I closed it, I was like, I'd read the second one, so I'm excited to see it's coming out this year. Number 5 was Biggest Disappointment. And if you've seen some of my reviews from earlier in the year, you might already know that this is The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. And to me, it was the biggest disappointment because it was actually on my list of the 10 books that was most anticipated this year. So I think it kind of fell the furthest, was maybe why it was my biggest disappointment, because I had such high expectations and it didn't quite deliver. In number 6, at the opposite, we have Biggest Surprise, and for that, I've sort of mentioned it already, it was definitely Creatures of Passage by Morowa Yejidé. This one, I guess, was my biggest surprise because I had no plans on reading it. I remember when I was reading the long list of the Women's Prize for Fiction, and I saw that one and I was like, oh, the trauma. I was like, I'm not sure if I really want to deal with it. But then I found a copy and I decided to give it a try, and honestly it blew me away. I think that she's a writer that I would definitely read again, and you know, look out for her next book. but it's a book that I'm also really highly recommending. Number 7 is favorite new author, or like new to you or debut. And because of my favorite books this year, I really truly have to go with Caleb Azumah Nelson. It was his debut novel and also my first time reading him, so I adore that. And second was Su Lin Tan, who wrote Daughter of the Moon Goddess, because honestly it was incredible and it was also her debut novel. So yeah. Number 8 is newest fictional crush, and I didn't really know what to say about that one. Last year I also struggled, I guess because I'm more of a visual person, so like if I watch a movie, like it'll be easier for me to have a crush basically on like the character than imagining them in my head. But there are a couple of kind of love interests that I really enjoyed. I think the main one would be the love interest in One Winter Morning by Isabel Broom. I think he's Maori and he's sort of dating someone for most of the book anyway, but he was very kind of genuine and really lovely, and yeah, I thought he was really cool. Even though I didn't love that book, I thought the character was really good. But for me, I think my favorite kind of love interest and fictional crush stays as the main guy in Four Aunties and a Wedding. I was going with Four Weddings and a Funeral. Yeah, Four Aunties and a Wedding. He's a love interest in the first one, so I think potentially was my response last year. But in this one, obviously she's marrying him, so yeah, I thought he's really sweet and supportive. Question number 9 is newest favorite character, and I have 3. I have 3 characters that honestly inspired me and made me want to just try new things and be more bold, and I just really enjoyed their attitude and energy. First one was Agnes Grey. I really just enjoyed her character, a bit like Jane Eyre. I also really enjoyed Sophie from The Grand Sophie by Georgia Heyer, and I think she was just so bold, and I just liked her, I don't know, yeah, her vibe was really cool. And finally, I really enjoyed the character of Xingyan in Daughter of the Moon Goddess, the daughter of the Moon Goddess herself. I thought her character was also so like, yeah, again, it was like her boldness and energy, but she was determined to get out of the circumstances, escape and survive, and all the things that she did, and she did it well, and yeah, I just really enjoyed her journey as well, and I can't wait to see where she goes in the sequel. And question number 10 is a book that made you cry, and I have 3 books again in this one. The first one is Great Circle. I cried at the end, and even though the book was quite an epic journey and there were bits that I didn't quite care about as much, the end really touched me in like a beautiful way. The second book was actually The Crossing. It made me cry for a whole different reason. It was traumatic and just so deeply touching and real, and yeah, just traumatic basically. So it made me cry again. And the last book is a book that I can't really tell a title, but I read a friend's manuscript recently. It was 400 pages. It was an epic book about multi-generational like story of women, and it was amazing, honestly, and I'm not saying that because I know her. Honestly, it was so good, and I was actually crying at parts of her book because it was so touching and so well done. Question number 11 is, I guess at the other end of the spectrum, is a book that made you happy. I actually really enjoyed Manifesto by Bernardine Evaristo. I think it's a book that really inspired me, which I guess makes me happy. I also was really soothed by The Tea Dragon Society by Kay O'Neill. It was just very comforting read. So really good. What other book made me happy? The end of Agnes Grey made me really happy, actually. So that was really nice. Yeah, I've been reading a lot of traumatic books, I feel like, in the first half of the year. So I need to work on the lighter reads that make me happy, I think. Number 12 is the most beautiful book that you've bought so far this year or received. I can't think of one. Even like the books that I bought like this week on my book haul from Montreal. French books are actually really boring. The covers and the spines. But anyway, I remember my last video I showed the book haul that I did on our Wales, England trip, and one of the books was The Lamplighters. I think it's Emma Stonex, and that was really beautiful cover with like the gold accents and stuff, so I think that would be really nice. And finally, the last question is, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? Well, I'm in a very chill mood, and I actually didn't write any answers for that question because I usually prepare myself a little bit, and I didn't prepare anything for this one because I'm just going with the flow, like I said, you know. However, what are some goals that I'm thinking about right now? Like I said earlier, I really need to continue and I want to read more classics. I will be participating in Victober again this year, so I'm planning a few of my Victorian reads for that month. I'm very excited for it. I also have plans on reading The Count of Monte Cristo as a read or buddy read with Rosie Cockshott, which we're actually going to be starting very soon, so very exciting. Hopefully we can finish it. It's so big. It's actually 2 books. Can't count it as 2 books, can we? But yeah, and also another goal of a big book, big chunk one, is The Little Friend by Donna Tartt. It's the one book that I brought with me to Canada, and I actually read a little bit already, so hopefully I can keep it up and actually finish it and maybe leave it here so I don't have to log that brick back up with me on the plane. But yeah, I think those are the main ones that I would like to get to. I'm sure there's plenty of other ones, like all the arcs that I have on NetGalley and stuff like that, but I think the 2 chunkers and some more classics would be my goal primarily for the rest of the year. Anyway, thank you so much for watching as always. Please don't hesitate to leave a comment. Let me know what was your favorite book of the year so far, your biggest disappointment. Don't hesitate to, have a wee rant, or, let me know if you read any of the books that I've mentioned, if you've enjoyed them or not. I would love to get your opinion and your comments as always. And don't forget to see you back. Bye!